What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and today we got a good one. This is an annual show that we do with Matt Harmon, talking through the must-draft wide receivers for this season. I reference his work all the time with Reception Perception, so I figured why not have the guy behind the idea here in the flesh. How is it going, Matt, today?
Ron, I'm doing really well. If my voice is a little bit shot, I did spend all weekend in Vegas, not doing Vegas things, but a little bit here and there, but for a work event, and was hosting shows, Q&As, live events all weekend. So as much as I am sick of hearing the sound of my own voice, the people need their takes. They need their wide receiver information. So I'm really happy to be talking with you today.
Yep, we absolutely did. Is those in Vegas? Did you do any of the drafts? I know that I've seen before, like they'll hire like a girl or something to like come do the stickers on the board. This is kind of a crazy thing to ask, but I've heard it's like a whole show there if you do a draft.
I did not. I was out there for Yahoo
business
events. For business. So no drafting, just helping other people try to make some good decisions along the way.
Now, we are going to get into your must-draft receivers here. We have 6, and then I will say this is like an overall receiver show where I like to bounce my ideas off of Matt, where I think that, I mean, as you know at this point, I'm much more rooted in the yards per out run, the metrics and everything, but I like kind of seeing there's more to it than that. These guys aren't pieces on a spreadsheet. They have to flow within an offense together. And your first must-draft receiver, we'll talk about the high-end guys first. I do want to hear your thoughts on Drake London because he's been somebody that has been tough. Not tough for me to draft, but I mean, you like him a lot. People like him a lot. I've seen him go as high as like 112, 111 before. So lay out what you're thinking about Drake London for this year.
Yeah, I normally wouldn't come in with somebody that is like a consensus first 2-round pick for this show because honestly, we don't talk about this enough, but really we say the phrase destination is destiny where it comes to like young quarterbacks and being drafted. They're more often failed than they fail. But in fantasy football, like where you get your draft slot often determines like who you're going to get in the first couple of rounds. So I don't want to come in here and like bang the table for somebody that's going super early because you just kind of have to be in the right spot from an ADP perspective to get Drake London. But at the same time, man, I have found myself like much farther ahead of what seems like the consensus on Drake London this year. Like I have him ranked 10th overall this year. And he goes sometimes like in Yahoo drafts or places like that, he'll go in like the mid to back half of the second. And I just think that the upside case for him is not dissimilar to the guys that do have slightly higher ADPs at the wide receiver position. Your Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr., even Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think he belongs at the top really of that tier because for a couple different reasons. One, he's as good as those guys. Like that's where I think even though it took him 3 years to kind of have that massive season, whereas some of these rookies from last year had that right away, to me, that doesn't automatically mean that like the rest of their career will be this upward trajectory to surpass where Drake London is. I think London's a great player. I think he was really maximized last year in this new offense because Arthur Smith, who I sometimes think gets more crap than he deserves, but one thing I don't love about Smith's offense is that the usage of the players pre-snap, like the number 1 X receiver, is very static. London was outside and on the line of scrimmage on over 80% of his snaps and reception perception in both of his first 2 seasons in Smith's offense. Last year, career high rate of snaps off the line of snaps, used in motion much more, was not just deployed in the slot, but targeted out of the slot a bunch. And he just, again, had this career best season. He's running a bunch of these like big in-breaking routes, which was really a good fit with Kirk Cousins, who loves to work the middle of the field. I do think that Penix obviously introduces a new variable there, but he also introduces a new variable, which we saw realized in the last 3 games of last season, where those guys were just in sync on like deep and outside breaking routes where no quarterback through Drake London's career has been able to access him at any point, deep and down, like deep outside breaking routes like that. So I think Penix there, and I think they're going to use more play action this year. I think this offense is going to feel very different with a quarterback that he's not like a scrambler or anything like that, but he allows you to actually get under center, to move around a little bit more, move the pocket. Just going to feel a little bit more dynamic. I think there will be more diversity within the offense, both in the run and pass game, really, which is another reason I like Bijan Robinson as a top 2 pick this year, which is not at all an outlandish opinion. But I'm really just high on this Falcons offense because I think they're going to throw the ball a lot. I think London could lead the NFL in targets this year. Darnell Mooney's banged up. So to me, just again, he checks a lot of boxes for a guy that I think could have a wide receiver 1 overall season this year.
Yeah, I like that call a lot. And you make a good point up top with like, you can like Drake London as much as you want, but if you're picking 103, you're not going to get him. Like I've been screaming on my lungs. I love Jahmyr Gibbs, but I haven't gotten him in like a managed league yet because I haven't picked at like the 102 or 103. And it's just been really tough sledding. But it's
kind of why I like the turn, by the way. Like this year, I've almost liked those back half picks. And like, obviously if you get, nobody's complaining if you get a top 3 pick and you can get Chase or Robinson or Gibbs or Barkley, if that's your flavor. But yeah, like, damn, I mean, there's just so many quality options. All those wide receivers I rattled off there, I'm not like fading any of them. You could double tap that position. You could go running or wide receiver running back. Like the options are just very plentiful in the back half of the first round, early half of the second.
Yeah. And that's like a macro strategy take that I think has sort of caught on this year is that because in years past, it's felt really squeamish to double tap 2 of those receivers. But I think this year, it's very interesting the way running back, I mean, I don't want to call you Unk here, but I know you've been around for a little bit with the running back where
please don't.
But I'm sure you remember the days of like, I looked back to ESPN's default rankings back in 2020, 13 of the top 14 picks were running backs at that point. And we're now getting to a spot where even I can think back to like in 2010, people couldn't fathom the idea of getting Chase Brown at like the 212 or even the idea of like Kenneth Walker in the middle to late 3rd round. So you can now start 2 receivers where it feels a little squeamish, but 3-4 turn, you can get Trevion Henderson, James Cook, some of those guys fall to that range. So it's a little bit more cozy is all I'm trying to say is where running backs go these days. But with London, I think you bring up a good point. Really, the issue for me has been the decision point versus him and AJ Brown. It's so tough to pass on AJ Brown because I think you can break it down a little bit better in terms of I think the environment's much better for London where he's getting this inside out usage. There's upside that Penix takes a step forward. It's going to be a pass happier offense. And that's really the downside of AJ Brown is just it's so disappointing. And I don't want to turn this into an AJ Brown rip that like unleash this man, get him into a high volume passing offense. Cause I'm looking at his reception perception here. The whole thing's green, 97 versus man, 96 versus press. Like he truly is one of the best wide receivers of his generation. And I don't know that we ever see a season like what Chase just had. And it truly does feel like in another, multiverse that AJ Brown could have had one of those years.
Absolutely. It's why I've always said he belongs in like everybody's top 5 wide receiver rankings in real life. And I love that you point this out because he definitely belongs in that group of wide receivers I've just mentioned there. I think that he kind of fits in the back half just because of that tier, like the second tier, which again is just so good this year, only because obviously what we know about the Eagles is that they have a great defense. They have a great run game. They probably are not going to push that level from a pass volume perspective. But I also say that we know that, and I feel like we should be maybe 70 to 75% sure of that. Whereas I think most drafters are like, no, that is a 100% a fact. And we just know that that's not how football works. Like, right. Honestly, if they go from being the 1st best defense to like the 8th or 9th best defense, even that is going to be a dramatic change from a volume perspective to these pass catchers. So I've absolutely totally fine taking AJ Brown in the 2nd round. I agree with you. He still has, I feel like I come away from, I think I might have wrote this in the profile, that I feel like I come away from every season after charting AJ Brown thinking like, damn, he should have had 2,000 yards last year. And it was obviously a number of factors, some of which I just mentioned. Also, there's always like a health thing with AJ Brown. He has been dealing with a hamstring injury this offseason. That's another reason, like he's not on this list of guys we're going to talk about, but I think Devontae Smith is very, he's fallen into the group of players that just like nobody talks about because he's on paper, he's never going to project for one of these massive seasons. And he's just kind of always in that steady wide receiver 2 range where there's a ton of guys I think could get there. But like, let's say all those things change from the run game, pass game perspective. The defense takes a step back and AJ Brown misses time. Devontae Smith, his profile was really damn good last year too. Career best profile really for him. And he got that like pre-snap role that, he's moving around the formation. He's taking stuff in the slot. So I just think like both of these Eagles wide receivers are guys I want to click on this year as well.
Yeah. But to your point with Drake London, I've now capitulated. and I've put AJ Brown behind Drake London because the hamstring
Yeah.
is a little bit tough. You get the reports that he's like draining his knee before every game last year, and then of course Eagles are really good.
Don't love
And
that.
I see the upside with London too. Like he could just lead the league in receptions, and you kind of pointed out that he's like sneaky, like still ascending, right? It's like year 4. He's a very young player, and he didn't have an amazing year 1 from a production standpoint, but all the nerds in terms of like yards per out run and PFF grade and targets per out run, he was an absolute monster, even in a bad situation. And Penix does give you upside, where last year, I mean, Penix, he looked decent in terms of like big time throw rate. It's a very small sample, but it could be fun. But I did want to ask, I have your next receiver here that I'll sort of put up to the top of the queue. I want to hear about George Pickens and how he fits in Dallas, where really fun player. It seems like he was kind of casted away with Matt Canada as like just run streaks the entire time, buddy. How does that kind of change in Dallas?
Yeah, Matt Canada's offense. I mean, that's another one that, and we'll talk about this with another player later. You almost just like want to throw out every like kind of signal from it because it's like a high school offense, really. So just everything with like the receiver usage is terrible. But that's one thing that's worth noting with Pickens that I think last year was a true breakthrough season from him from an individual perspective. Like I would not be coming on this show and talking about George Pickens as a guy that I want to draft this year. And frankly, somebody that I think has been like really mispriced in most fantasy rankings throughout the course of the offseason. Like, man, we've finally just got him ranked inside the top 30 consensus players over on Fantasy Pros. Like what I've got him in the top 20. Like I think he could have that type of season this year because like, and again, I would not be coming on here saying that if it was just, well, he's going to Dak Prescott. He's going to the best offensive environment of his career without this breakthrough that I think we saw from him last year. Honestly, Ron, like this was a guy that at times early on in Pittsburgh, I was kind of like skeptical about in terms of him ever being a true consistent starting outside receiver. And I'm not quite sure that he is a like true, we'd label him as a consistent player right now, but he did get a lot better. Went from like 64.9% success rate versus man as a rookie, 68.7% in year 2, which is solid, but jumps all the way up to 72.8% last year and 77.6% success rate versus press coverage in 2024. Really big, important signals for a perimeter X receiver, which is what I think George Pickens will be. I think he will get moved around a little bit in Dallas. I've heard that like in training camp, they're kind of stacking Pickens and CeeDee Lamb like right next to each other, which I think is just going to create a big headache for opposing defensive coordinators. Because if you leave Pickens in like any sort of soft coverage situation, he's now the type of guy that I think will consistently separate in those instances, which I was skeptical about him early on in his career doing that. So the fact you saw this big kind of breakthrough from him last season as an individual player. And yes, he is going to play with the best quarterback in his career. He's going to play easily the healthiest offensive environment of his career. I'm really bullish on Pickens being the type of guy that is a little bit of like the T. Higgins to CeeDee Lamb's Jamar Chase. Like if you're going to hit with 2 wide receivers inside the top 12 overall scorers, it needs to be 2 really good players. I think we have that here in Dallas. It needs to be the right passing environment. And I think this team's going to have to throw the football a lot, not just because of the state of their running back room, but also the state of their secondary and front 7, really. Like there are a lot of questions on this Dallas defense, and you're going to need a guy that's going to score a lot of touchdowns. And I do think George Pickens' skill set as a quick separator against press coverage and also a ball winner is going to lead him to score a lot of touchdowns this year.
Yeah, I love that comp of he really is discount T. Higgins, where you can now get him in the 5th, 6th round George Pickens. And there is that's what's very funny. We talk about kind of catering to the more common man in fantasy football, and there is this stigma around the wide receiver too. Like everybody wants the I'm curious, like would you rather have not to put you on the spot, like George Pickens or Calvin Ridley?
Oh, I would rather have George Pickens, and
exactly.
I like Calvin Ridley a lot this year too. But
exactly.
I'm ahead of consensus on Calvin Ridley, but I'd still rather have Pickens.
And it's sometimes tough for people to wrap their head around. Of like, why would you want the wide receiver 2? It's like there's going to be so much volume after George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb. There's really not a ton going on. Yes, there's Jake Ferguson. Like you said, like the passing environment should be great. George Pickens is like genuinely live to lead this team in receiving touchdowns. I don't think it would shock anybody if he kind of had a really great season like that. And I think that he's also due. I will say this is something I wanted to ask about is like contested catch rate is tough season over season. He is somebody who's known as that. His rookie year, 67% on 28 contested catch targets. Since then, he was at like 33% and 37%. I would love to see that come up, see him moss some guys. You have to wonder as well, like how much of that is like placement from the quarterback too. But But yeah, if he could kind of rise up in the contested catch stuff and really be their true dominant X, I think me and you're on the same page. That like top 12 is in his range of outcomes.
Now, it's a good note on his contested catch rate because that's something that has been a bit of him and DK Metcalf are like two guys that are kind of living on reputation with the contested catch stuff and like their physical, like the way that they look and the way that it looks when they win a contested catch. And Pickens, especially, like his contested catch wins are probably like top tier in the league, you know, when he actually pulls that down.
Remember them.
You remember them, and you respect. He's got a great catch radius, which he's, as you noted, needs to use a lot. And it's a good point as well. Like contested catch rate is not like player isolating. You know, contested targets are not all created equal. Like where are they on the field, and how accurate is the placement? Like what's the degree of difficulty on the contested catches, and that's like impossible to quantify. But I also think that Pickens does need to, and this is true with his like ability to beat zone coverage consistently, which is less important for those perimeter X receivers. Like you want them to be more man coverage receivers, but it's just the overall consistency of his game. Like he needs to work to the right spots. He needs to time those jumps a little bit better. He needs to play with a bit like more consistency, shielding the cornerback to not let them get involved in the contested catch. And also just the consistently truly catching the football. Sometimes that has been an issue for him on some of those deeper targets.
Yeah, his drop rate was a little higher last year, but we know I actually, you have one of the best articles about drop rate and how it's kind of like a negative, like emotional response when drops happen.
Yeah.
I had it annoyed me. This is another side tangent, but like a Jaguars / content creator was getting on Brian Thomas about drops. And I was just like, it was driving me up a wall where he's like, this is a huge concern that Brian Thomas keeps dropping the football. It's like, I don't know, man. Like he has maybe the raw totals for drops, but when you look at the drop rate, like he was fine. And most receivers are.
No, most of the best receivers in football have a lot of drops because they're getting a lot of targets. But no, it's funny you bring up, Colin.
That was your article, right?
Yes, it was. And I was going to say that I kind of balked at you, maybe wanting to call me Unk. And I'm thinking like, damn, that was a long time ago. I wrote it's not even on receptionperception.com. It's on Backyard Banter. So like that was a long time ago.
Now, before we get into this next wide receiver, make sure you are subscribed. About only half of you guys are actually subscribed to the channel. I know a lot of you guys are probably watching this video and you get recommended these videos and then you just have forgotten over time to subscribe. So make sure you go change that. Go down below, hit the subscribe button, leave a like. And then I also want to say that this video is sponsored by my draft guide over on Patreon, patreon.com/Ron Stewart. Over there, you get my top 200 rankings cheat sheet that you can check off players as you go. They're tiered. I have my target rounds for every single player. My targets, my fades are all outlined there. It is the best resource that you could possibly have to go out there and dominate your draft. Draft weekend is coming up here. Everyone has their home league drafts right around now. So if you have one coming up, make sure you check out patreon.com/Ron Stewart. I will have a link to that in the description and in the comment section down below. Let's get back to the video. But somebody that actually had a great contested catch rate last year that I don't think sticks out in people's mind is Rome Odunze, who's your third must-draft wide receiver. He, among 49 wide receivers with 80 or more targets, led all of them with a 72% contested catch rate. And that's kind of the only positive you can point to on that first year. I'm curious kind of like when you were charting it and you're looking at this stuff, because one of my favorite watches last year was the QB School, watching the Chicago Bears offense. I think that's JT O'Sullivan over at the QB School YouTube channel. And he's just like, he's getting on the entire operation that Shane Waldron was running out there, and DJ Moore's dogging it on every route. So like it seems like Rome Odunze was like at least the most on task of everybody out there. But what did you kind of like, I don't know, piece together from what that year was?
Two things. And I say this with number one, a lot of appreciation to JT's work. And I also say this as somebody that owes the 2024 wide receiver class a lot for the financial boon that class brought to reception perception. JT owes the Bears dysfunction probably for a good bit of his YouTube channels, because YouTube channel revenue, because that has been a big boon for him. He's been great about just calling out not just this staff, but I mean even some of the Justin Fields stuff too, and just the overall mess that the passing game has been of late. So and he's great to point that out, because dude, it was such a nightmare last season. They're the offense that I was hinting to earlier in the Pickens section, where I kind of almost just want to throw everything out from that season last year. It was so disorganized. It was such a mess. Everybody knows now Caleb Williams has said that like he wasn't even like taught like what to watch or anything like that. And obviously he needs to work on his own individual play. All of these guys do. Like I even talked with Roma Dunze about this once this offseason for my show over at Yahoo, the Yahoo Fantasy Forecast. He came on the show and I was mentioning like, yeah, going back and like charting your profile, I do think there are issues against zone coverage. Can you like kind of go into that a little bit? And he talked about like, yeah, it's just without like really saying it, kind of noting that the drop depths from the quarterback to the route depths were like never tied together within the concept of the plays. And I think there was a lot of like freelancing from other wide receivers in that room that it made it hard for somebody who was not often the first read in the progression to like be in the right time against zone coverage. Both from his perspective and then, Caleb Williams, like where he needed to find him too. So that's something that both these guys in year 2 can get better at. But when you just look at the stuff that like Roma Dunze can control, which some of that he needs to be better. He just needs to be better against zone coverage as well, which he would definitely admit. But like his press man scores are extremely good, especially against press coverage, like clearing 78% against press coverage as a rookie from a success rate standpoint and reception perception. Really great indicator. He fits in with like, the Allen Robinson types, AJ Greens in terms of like beating press coverage at different points in their career. And I think he's going to play a lot of X receiver in this offense. I don't think he will be exclusively an X because this is not how Ben Johnson operates. And we've even seen in the preseason, like him taking some routes from the slot, which I think will be good for him. It'll actually honestly boost some of the like concerns we have from a consistency standpoint if he's moved around the formation more. But yeah, man, I mean, this is a guy that just fits that like classic X receiver mold. He wins at all 3 levels. He's an explosive guy, certainly down the field. I just think, I loved him as a prospect. I did not think the rookie year film was an issue metrics wise. Yes, it is an issue, but you like all those per route stats it is impacted by environment. It's impacted by your teammates. It's impacted by your quality of quarterback. And like Caleb Williams, I think can be good, but he was not a consistently good quarterback in his rookie year. It was a horrible environment. And it was a pretty loaded receiver room, which is my really only hang up with the Dunze this year is that I do think it's still pretty crowded in Chicago. So I don't want to go crazy with him and like say, oh yeah, he's going to finish as a top 10 producer or anything like that. But he is a guy that I think will beat his ADP just because I do expect him to emerge as the most productive player in this passing game.
I like that call. That's what I was going to say. I think he straight up outproduces DJ Moore this year. I've been huge on Roma Dunze as well. I've been tossing out the stat that I've been borrowing Rich Rebar's stat from your show where he said, I believe it was 144 routes where there wasn't even a target on the play. So there's just, a tip or a throwaway or a sack, which you're not going to get good yards per out run or first downs per out run. So I've laid down my sword on Roma Dunze. The metrics you do have to throw out, even when you I've seen a guy, Jacob Gibbs, remove like sack, screens, scrambles, and his per route stuff matched up with DJ Moore, who is a fine NFL receiver at this point in his career. And I think for a rookie, that's like a fine baseline to keep up. I did kind of want to pick your brain on just like, I think this is one of the more interesting wide receiver rooms in fantasy football right now where DJ Moore is getting drafted very highly. You have Roma Dunze. You then have on top of that Luther Burden later on. You have Colston Loveland. Are you taking stabs at any of these? I don't want to speak for you. I assume DJ Moore is not very high on your like must draft list, but how are you treating it?
Yeah, I just wish DJ Moore went later. I think the all off season, like him being clearly the top dog in this passing game, I think is mostly just like fantasy drafters are familiar with his name and he had the quote best season of these guys last year. But yeah, I'm a longtime fan of DJ Moore's game. I really like him as a player. But I mean, I talked to him this offseason too. He would tell you he did not have a good year last year. Like he did not play well in isolation. And like, career worst reception perception numbers really since like his second year in the league. Like once he got into his prime, this is easily the worst we've seen of him, what he did from an individual perspective last year. Now I also hated his role in the offense last year. I was talking with Robert Mays of The Athletic, who is a Bears fan. And, he was kind of saying like, he had the alignment data of Andre Johnson did DJ Moore. Is this just like pure boundary on the line of scrimmage X receiver? And I was like, yeah, but he also kind of had like the route, the target distribution of Kadarius Toney, which because they're throwing him all these disgusting screens and stuff. So yeah, I do think DJ can bounce back and have a better year this year, but I just haven't been drafting because he goes so high and because I think like Rome Odunze will either pass him or be like close to him in production. So I'd just rather take the guy that goes later and is probably an ascending player. It also bothers me that I think everything that Ben Johnson has said and done this offseason has been like not so subtly calling out DJ Moore. You know, I mean, even drafting Luther Burden, who I think is a wide range of outcomes player, but somewhere in the middle of that range of outcomes is he becomes DJ Moore. You know, I think there are ways where if he doesn't play to his ability, he could be worse than that. But I also think like the second he got drafted by this Bears staff, I remember saying in real time, like, that's a perfect fit because he's going to get pushed here. Like they're going to push him to be what he needs to be
in preseason.
He's blocking in preseason. Dude, that guy was not 2025, the only year in time where blocks have like gotten you fantasy football hype. But I think that's honestly a good thing because especially for a staff like this, where they do want you to be that active player within the process of the entire play. Like you can't be selfish in this room. It's just the facts of the matter. And for Luther Burden needs that pushing, like, and he's a guy that he is a slot player, but he's not just a manufactured player to me. Like I actually thought he was better against man coverage than zone coverage. He faced a lot of zone coverage because of his role, but there is some like Bud Light, Malik Neighbors, like maybe a Brandon Ayuk sort of path in the high end of his range of outcomes. But yeah, he just has a very similar skill set to DJ Moore that I think there's a chance that he's probably a great candidate for gets drafted in your home leagues and then gets dropped, and then like somebody else picks him up later on when he's truly breaking out in the second half of the year. So I'm definitely open to him. I'm open to him in Dynasty. And Colson Loveland's a guy too that I think they're going to play a lot of 12 personnel, which last year I believe the Raiders led all teams with like 34% 12 personnel rate. I think the Bears could push to like 40%, which definitely complicates this third receiver stuff. You know, it complicates the Olamide Zacchaeus bros who are hyped after the preseason, which I think he's like a good, useful player and might block Burden for a while. It definitely complicates the early career, or if not early season breakout for Luther Burden. But yeah, I'm definitely interested in taking some of the Bears guys that go later, which unfortunately is just not DJ Moore.
Yeah, exactly. I've been screaming at the top of my lungs about Luther Burden, where I do just like you said, the wide range of outcomes. I do love that this spot is just so good for him as well. With if he's buying into blocking and we really get a scheme that's detail oriented here, I think it could be. And you bring up Brandon Ayuk. If you remember, Brandon Ayuk, I think down the stretch of his rookie year was like a 15+ point per game, like playoff producer for fantasy. So we'll see. DJ Moore doesn't seem long for this regime, but I will kind of give you a free choice of the next must draft receiver you want to talk about here.
Yeah, let's go to San Francisco and talk Ricky Pearsall, which, by the way, that Brandon Ayuk point is so funny because what happened right after he did finish his rookie season strong, immediately to the doghouse, which I actually think does inform some of what we're going to talk about with Ricky Pearsall here, because this team just doesn't really trust rookie wide receivers, to the point even that when they have a rookie wide receiver like Brandon Ayuk, who not just crushed it from a production standpoint, his rookie year reception perception profile was so good that I was taking him everywhere going into that second year, was hyping him up like crazy. And then he comes out and he's playing behind Trent Sherfield to start the year. And I'm like, oh man, we're going to have to shut down the business before it even begins here. Like we're going to shut the website had just launched and we're going to have to close down shop here. It's going to ruin my reputation. But that was to the point that, yeah, he was a guy who knew how to create separation, but he didn't really know like how to create open windows within the process and the concept of the routes that in the way that they wanted, in addition to some other stuff. You know, they wanted to block more, which he definitely picked that up. He became like one of the best blocking receivers in the league. And with Pearsall, number one, he's a prospect that I really liked. 87th percentile success rate versus man coverage in his prospect profile. He won at all three levels, was not just a slot only guy, was a guy who could get loose vertically and also win in tight coverage as well. So he gets drafted by the 49ers. I think both me and everybody really expect him to be like a red shirt guy. I think the team probably expect him to be a bit of a red shirt guy. Then he has like kind of an injury plagued offseason. And as we all know, got shot in the chest in August and had to miss a bunch of time. Anytime your rookie wide receivers miss time, it's tough. I mean, again, we just talked about Luther Burden. Ben Johnson was saying that like he was so behind coming into training camp because he missed all that time. You miss time then into training camp and then into the early parts of the season, you're really going to fall behind. So Pearsall comes out in like week 7, I believe is his first game. And then Ayuk gets hurt in that game. And you could see even early on, I wrote about this in his in-season charting in the rookie report on reception perception. Like Pearsall did, number one, he didn't look great because he's coming back from being shot in the damn chest. Number two, but you could also see that he was like playing this like singular role within the wide receiver room. And I think this was a signal we probably should have taken more seriously when he was drafted. Like he wasn't drafted to replace Deebo Samuel. He wasn't drafted to replace Brandon Ayuk, who was soon into like a contract holdout situation with the team. And obviously Deebo's no longer there. He was drafted to play Ricky Pearsall's role, which is like play flanker, play slot, be in motion, and run these like whip option and return routes. It's much more like what Cooper Kupp has done for the Los Angeles Rams once they transition to this like more drop back heavy game under Matthew Stafford, which is what the 49ers are mid doing now with Brock Purdy. Like they trust him to do that like big boy drop back from under center and like play actual quarterback, not the Jimmy Garoppolo hold your hand through like pure progression stuff. So I think that is really interesting and really bullish for Pearsall. But then he finishes the season so strong. I mean, the last like 4 weeks, he's just smoking man coverage, finishes the season with an 82.7% success rate versus zone, which actually was the most among all the rookies charted last year, this great class. He showed that ability to win against zone, win against man, win against press, 75% success rate versus press. I thought that was really strong for him. And then the offseason just gone extremely well for him. He comes back from the hamstring injury. You can even see in the preseason, like Brock Purdy now trusts him to be open within the timing and the concept of the plays. Like when he threw him that like in-breaking dig route against the Raiders before he even turns his head, like I was like, oh, we're locked in here. These two guys have that chemistry down. So I know Pearsall's got a lot of steam. I think the steam is catching up to probably where he should have been all along, even though he does also deserve a boost because Jennings is not healthy. Ayuk's not going to start the season. And the entire 49ers, I mean, they traded for Sky Moore. The entire 49ers receiver room has been banged up this offseason.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point with the preseason where you obviously don't want to run with the preseason too much, but his highest route percentage last year I'm seeing here, 19% dig routes. That's what that was. And everyone like made a note that like Purdy, it is the and we go back to the QB school, but he highlights it where he'll do like capital A anticipation. And that's one of Purdy's things, you know, where the window is there. I think it signals a lot of trust. So he's somebody where my numbers brain has sort of had to just be like, he got shot, man. Like you can look at the per route metrics. You can look at yards per route run. And it's like, at the end of the day, you really can't take much from what he did in that first year besides prospect profile. How did he look in charting? And then also, like you said, like he at least showed us in a good offense. He put up 8 catches for 141 yards and a touchdown. Of course, is that Detroit when they were banged up? Sure. But it's still, we're in the NFL. We're putting up big boy plays. I also love too, I'm a sucker for rushing production at wide receiver. I do love that he had 3 carries for 45 yards last year. So like maybe you can get some fun Kyle Shanahan usage there a little bit more than we thought. Where in college he was, I don't want to use the word gadgety, but you know what I mean? He was more dynamic than maybe he would present.
Yeah, absolutely. No, he's a very dynamic player. Probably not like a tackle breaker, which one of the other guys we're going to talk about here, like I think is good after the catch, but he's not like a true tackle breaker, but it's mostly just like vision. And that's what this team wants. Like they want you to hit the lanes and get going downhill when you got the ball in your hands, which he certainly can do. It's funny. Like I see people say about they were banged up at that point. This is a team that I know there's the Sam Darnold of it all, but this defense smoked one of the best and most productive offenses in the league like the very next game. And a lot of that was because a lot of that was, and I'm talking about the Vikings here, a lot of that was because they were just locked down in the secondary. Like the secondary was still like Amik Robertson had a great game against Justin Jefferson. Like they still had Brian Branch out there who was kind of responsible for some of those Ricky Pearsall big plays. And again, I think that it's a lot of it too is a good signal because that's a very man coverage heavy defense in Detroit. And like I said, I didn't chart this until like later in the offseason, but man, the 2 games prior, Rams, Dolphins, he was obliterating those 2 teams in man coverage right before that Lions game. And again, you got to actually like watch how the plays play out. Like those plays were supposed to go to Ricky Pearsall in that Lions game. And I think it's because coaching staff watched the film and said, hey, we're playing against one of the most man coverage teams in the NFL. Let's use our best man coverage beater, which is without question right now, is until Brandon Ayuk is back, and who knows when he'll ever be back to 2023 form, if ever. But until then, their best man coverage receiver is Ricky Pearsall.
Yeah, I like that shot as well. Like you said, I mean, he's getting steam, rightfully so. I have completely forced my hand to whatever the market dictates at this point with Pearsall. I got him actually at a really nice price the other night. I got him at the 701 in an
Yeah.
FFPC, so that was really nice. But I got him ranked 67, so I got him as like a mid sixth. I think in some sharp leagues he might go like late fifth, but
it was definitely awesome when he was like an 11th round pick.
a lot of that going on this right now. It is peak. Oh, it was really cool when this guy went a lot later, you know.
But I'm with you. I have him ranked 65th
Yeah.
overall. So yeah, like he's a guy that I want to be. A lot of the guys I'm talking about today, which I hope people would love for people to go check it out. It's on receptionperception.com. It's the guys that I'm higher on than consensus article this year, like 10 wide receivers. So I picked some from that. Not all the guys we're going to talk about today are on that list, but Pearsall was one that like I put a bonus section. I couldn't quite like rank him ahead of consensus just because the steam is caught up, but I was like, the steam is caught up to me. Okay. So I feel like I can still include him on this list.
Well, who's your next must draft receiver that you feel like the steam hasn't caught up just enough yet to where you could still put him on that list?
It's Emeka Egbuka, which ironically, he's another guy that, again, it was fun when he was like a 11th round pick or whatever. But right now, I've ranked him up to 66th overall. So right behind Ricky Pearsall. I mentioned this like Yahoo event I was at this weekend, and part of it was like a Q&A that people got to ask us, like me and Scott Pianowski and Justin Boone and Nate Tice was there too, got to like ask us questions. And someone asked me like, okay, feet to the fire, who would you rather have, Pearsall or Egbuka? I was like, I literally have them like back to back. Like, don't make me choose. But I do have Pearsall one spot ahead. But Egbuka is a guy that still, when you look at like consensus fantasy rankings and some like ADP on Yahoo and stuff like that, he still goes too late. He's still a guy that consensus rankings have outside the top 40 receivers, and I think he deserves to be squarely in the 30s now at this point. And man, like, when it's funny, it went from when he was drafted in April, like, really? They're taking another wide receiver? And now it's like, thank God they have that other wide receiver, because the runway's been completely clear for him. They've been nonstop hyping him. And I think a lot of it is because of who he was as a prospect. Like, he was a great college prospect and a guy that I think can come in here right now and be pro ready. Like, that is always dangerous to say. No question about it. I get it. But I do think his skill set is really akin to being somebody who can start right away in the NFL. 83.6% success rate versus zone coverage as a prospect. Not only was that number two in this class behind Travis Hunter, it also would have led the 2024 class too. Like, all of those great rookie wide receivers, great prospects. He was as good of a zone beater, solid man coverage beater, 81.3% success rate versus press. Very small sample, but still certainly an ability to beat press coverage. And I think that's why he's going to play outside more than just be the Chris Godwin, like, handcuff or backup. This team just did this last year too with a Jalen McMillan, like a slot receiver in college, and made him a guy that played on the perimeter because, man, I just finished charting Mike Evans recently and put his profile on the site, or it should be up pretty soon if it's not already. Liam Cohen, and I think that Josh Grizzard's not going to change too much, although that's obviously a variable with the overall Bucs ecosystem, just did a great job like blurring the line between what's an outside receiver and what's a slot receiver, with all the motion and sacking and bunches and splits and shifts pre-snap. So yeah, I just think there's so much for Egbuka, like, opportunity here. A guy that I thought would be ready to contribute right away and now is going to contribute right away because he's just a very good player that's going to earn that. And also, no Godwin until like October. Jalen McMillan's on IR. The runway's been pretty cleared here for Egbuka.
Yeah, not to pat myself on the back. My most rostered dynasty receiver is Egbuka. I just want to draft the good players. I don't want to get caught up in, when's he going to get this opportunity? It's the NFL. Things change. And with Egbuka, now this is where I want you to push back if I'm speaking outlandishly here, but I can't get the image out of my head. 92nd percentile versus press. Of course, really small sample, but I've been sort of contemplating of like, are you familiar with like Kentucky basketball, where a lot of these guys, they come to Kentucky to play basketball and there's so much talent. What I'm trying to say is it reminds me of like Ohio State and LSU, where like guys like Justin Jefferson or Brian Thomas, they don't get to show their entire ability skill set because they're out there with another stud. And with Egbuka, it just seems like, I don't want to draw the comparison to Justin Jefferson directly, but the Jefferson playing completely inside of the slot and
I
being
did.
like,
I've said
you
the
know,
same thing. I'm could keep going because I've made this kind of like allusion to it as well. So keep going.
because he got minimalized coming out where he goes in the late first and he's kind of overlooked despite being like a rock solid prospect, really, really clean. And everyone says, oh, well, he's just a slot. Well, first of all, I mean, me and you know, with guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown and Chris Godwin, that's still absolutely fine. But there is this hidden door upside with Egbuka where like maybe when you play next to Olave and Garrett Wilson and Marvin Harrison Jr., and then we also now talk about Jeremiah Smith, who's the next coming, it wouldn't be that shocking for him to get to the NFL and all of a sudden he has a much wider skill set than we previously thought. And he just is a really good player. He was a 5-star recruit coming out. He was that guy the entire way through. I just think that there's some like I think the steam's warranted is what I'm trying to say. Like if he was to come out here and put up a Puka Jefferson 17 point per game rookie season, like it wouldn't shock me one bit is sort of what I'm hinting at of like playing all over, being immediately that dude from day one.
Yeah, no question, man. I mean, first of all, yeah, like I said, I've made the allusion to like the Justin Jefferson stuff, and people like, let's not retcon who Justin Jefferson was either. Like he was a guy that went in the 20s. I mean, famously, Jalen Reagor got taken ahead of him.
Yep.
And that was a bad pick by the Eagles, but still, like he was not a guy that was considered like a slam dunk wide receiver prospect because of the things that you highlight there. But gets to the league and he's fantastic because it's just, to me, I think a lot of like prospecting with data is great. No question. Like we want to get within the neighborhood of where these guys are, but you do miss some of the context of that sometimes because it's what we just talked about in the NFL. And it's again, the same reason that like yards per out run and these stats are like they're not infallible because your production is going to be influenced by who you play with. And it's just, there's only one football to go around, but just because you weren't like a lead dog in college or you were a slot player in college doesn't mean you have to be in the NFL. And by the way, also, you mentioned the name St. Brown, who I think Egbuka probably, like if we're doing a upside comparison, I think he could end up being a St. Brown type, which, it's great. Like that's kind of Chris Godwin's on that same arc of player too. And you just think about like we only complain about the slot stuff when we're like talking about prospects. And it's like, nobody complains about Amon-Ra St. Brown, who at this point is not a slot only receiver. He's gotten better and better and better against man and press coverage every season. And like Egbuka could be that too. Like, he could be a guy who goes out and he's a slot heavy player at first, but then he continues to grow forward. Like nobody complains about that player, pushing to lead the NFL in catches and yards and stuff every single season. So yeah, I'm with you. I love Egbuka. And I mean, he's a guy that if you drafted him in Dynasty, I think you're actually going to get a really good profit on that. Cause like at this point he would go right now much higher than he would like based on what we know now than we did early this calendar year.
Yeah, getting a lot of offers that I'm just declining. I'm not making any deals. I'm getting like mixing in a first, and it's like, all right, man. I'll just hold here. But I think the more level-headed take, like you said, Amon-Ra St. Brown. If people remember, Amon-Ra St. Brown, his rookie year, his final 9 games, 19 plus points per game. It wouldn't shock me if something like that happened for Egbuka too, where he was a legitimate league winner. But you have a guy here, your 6th must-draft wide receiver, who is somebody that the spreadsheets nerds loved coming out. I've since backed off a little bit, but I'm excited that you want to talk about him. I'll let you reveal the last name here, the 6th must-draft receiver for you.
Yeah, look, it's Rashad Bateman. And to be clear, like I think Rashad Bateman is a guy that like I'll just believe in till he retires or I'm dead, whichever one comes first. And for Bateman, like I just have him ranked ahead of consensus. I probably will every year. He's a guy that goes like super late in drafts. And number one, we know he can be a spike week player. So like for best ball stuff like that, I think he was a much better pick than he was advertised all off season. And last year he led all wide receivers that had 40 plus catches in percentage of receptions that went for a first down or a touchdown, despite playing the fewest amount, like percentage wise, of snaps in the slot among that cohort of receivers that are like 40 plus catches. And the guys that are even close to him in terms of that slot rate are like Quentin Johnston, like Romeo Doubs, like these kind of sacrificial X receivers. And I just think Bateman from a skill set perspective is so much more than that. As a matter of fact, like after charting his 2023 reception perception, like I loved him as a prospect. Was way too high on him as a prospect. But a lot of it was because of his route running and ability to get open against man press coverage, zone coverage, like open at all 3 levels, which he translated to his first season in the NFL. But then injuries have really just continued to crush him to the point that he gets to that 23 season where he's finally just back on the field. And I was like, man, the underneath and intermediate separation is great. I'm not so sure that he's got the juice anymore to get down the field, which turned out like another year removed from serious, like potentially career-ending injuries or career-altering injuries. He turns in a 40.6% explosive play rate last year. Like the ability to get loose down the field was back, and Lamar Jackson like trusted him more. They connected a lot on these like scramble drills. So this is a guy that's going to be like a full-time player in an offense that everybody expects to be first or second best in the NFL. Like every source projects them to be a top 2 offense this year, and nobody wants to draft him. Like I like Zay Flowers. I actually think Zay Flowers is a guy that people just like don't talk about enough either. And he's a good productive player, good zone beater, but has some limitations to his game, places where Bateman is better than Zay Flowers. I just don't think there should be this massive gap between these two guys. And like I said, I like Zay Flowers, but there's like 1,000-yard season in Rashad Bateman from a talent perspective. And just like one or two things break right for him, I think he could really finally have that type of year this year. Again, when we expect this offense to be so good, and he's going to be on the field a lot. He's going to be on the field every single route, basically, that's available. And DeAndre Hopkins being there, Hopkins is what he is this year at this point in his career, but he could also take some of those like perimeter snaps away from Bateman and give him some more layups, which would certainly help the production profile.
The classic, what do you call it? The sacrificial
X receiver. Yeah.
Kind of shields him there. But I love that call. I do think some receivers, it's not linear. I know you held that hope for Tyler Lockett for a very long time, where some of these guys, it just takes a minute, man, where they got to sort of get their footing, figure it out. I mean, I'm looking at his year last year. It is funny. People are just like, nah, I'm good. But I mean, 45 for 750 and 9 touchdowns. That's really not bad at all, especially where you're getting him. The breakouts there. I've been taking him really, I'll be honest, like in redraft manage, it's a little tougher where it's like,
totally.
When am I ever going to flex this guy? But there certainly is a range of outcomes where he is somebody that can give you big spike weeks when you need him. Best ball, I think he's great to just pair with Lamar. But I'm happy you touched on Zay Flowers too, because that's kind of how I've been playing it, where I actually like Zay Flowers a lot. Where he's been somebody where I've been saying like break, because I think in terms of, we think of these year 3 receivers of like JSN and Addison and whoever, Jaden Reed, Josh Downs. Zay Flowers doesn't really get brought up as somebody who could take another step forward. You know, like he still could be better. His profile is looking how you had him graded out. He looked really good as well. If he takes a step forward, and really his issue is touchdowns, and everyone's like, okay, well, his touchdowns are capped out. And it's like, I understand that Lamar threw a ton of touchdowns and Flowers didn't score a bunch. But I mean, he scored like 3 or 4. It wouldn't be shocking. We see touchdowns bounce everywhere. Like, would it be that shocking if you looked up and he scored like 8 to 10, just like total between rushing and receiving? I don't think it would be. It wouldn't be jaw dropping to me in the best offense for him to end up in the end zone a few more times. That's at least what I'm hoping for. But it might be a pipe dream.
Well, two things there. One, if you're breaking ties in fantasy football, like go with a good player on a good team. Zay Flowers is without question a good player and without question on a good team. The second thing that I think is important that you pointed out there, with all of these like year 3 wide receivers, I think we're like obnoxiously quick to just assume that like guys are what they are, to the point that when guys like Nico Collins or Jawan Jennings like break out later in their careers, we act like this is some kind of, later in their career, like year 3, year 5, like we act like this is some revolution. Like and I get it. It is rare, but it's not impossible. And like we, especially even guys that like kind of have broken out. And I think Jaden Reed fits in this bucket a little bit too. Although maybe the Packers just are in this bucket where they assume he is what he is. And, maybe it'll be like another team or maybe just deeper into his career. My whole point in this is saying that I think we're too quick to label like a guy that's only spent like 2 years in the NFL. Like, this is what he is. Like, these guys can get better. They spend 365 days. The good ones do. They spend 365 days thinking like, how can I get better at this? It's just kind of crazy to me that we as a like fantasy football community or NFL public, whatever you want to say, like just so quick to label like, oh, this guy is what he is, when we quite literally see players improve every single year. That's
what kills me. People are so quick to just like copy and paste last year's stats. And it's like, when people are like, not everyone is what they are. Like the people,
right?
Like, remember, I know this is like an outlier, but like Cooper Kupp was one thing. He was the white slot receiver, wide receiver 2, unsexy pick until he wasn't. So these guys, they come out of nowhere. He was still earlier on in his career at that point. You could explain away, there's like ACL early on and stuff. So there's just a lot that can happen for these players. But I will start the next section of the show here where we're going to talk about just like a couple questions here. First up today, Terry McLaurin gets paid. I'm curious how you feel about the Washington offense. Like now we have Deebo Samuel in the mix, Jaden Daniels into year 2. How did Terry McLaurin grade out? Because he's actually on the opposite end of the spectrum with Zay Flowers, where it's like everyone's assuming that Zay Flowers can't score touchdowns. Everyone's assuming that Terry McLaurin just scored 13 and now he's going to score 6 this year because of regression. I'm curious, like, how does McLaurin look? Because he's tough for me in terms of the spreadsheet stuff where when we talk about target earning, he's like right at 20% targets per out run. You like to be at like 25% plus as like a true number one difference maker. So how does he profile, and like how come he doesn't? Is he just like playing big boy X too much for him to get more targets, or like how can we get Terry McLaurin like a 25% plus target share here?
Well, I think that first of all, with the touchdown stuff, it's like you can't compare his like career baseline to now because this is just an entirely different circumstance, you know, with Jaden Daniels there, which also I know I saw somebody like talking about this, maybe it was anecdotally, and then I went, and now I don't have the numbers offhand because I'm not I'm not Rich Rebar, I'm not perfect about this stuff, but like I remember going back and looking at like if you take out plays where there was a scramble, like he actually did significantly improve in terms of like his efficiency per route, stuff like that, which makes sense, right? Because again, it's the first time he's had like a legitimate quarterback in his career. Like, because again, if you look at like yards per out run, it looks very similar all throughout the course of his career. But last year truly was kind of like a breakthrough. I actually don't remember if it was like true for targets per route run perspective, but definitely like the efficiency was there from a breakthrough perspective. But I get it, like the target stuff is tough. Some of it is like he was from 2019 to 2022, he took anywhere between 85% and 94.6% of his sampled snaps and reception perception on the line of scrimmage, and was like a pure perimeter player. So like you said, big boy X receiver stuff. He has a very downfield route tree. So that's part of it from a targets perspective. And definitely if you're talking about like, old Sam Howell ain't forcing those throws down there. Taylor Heineke is not doing that either to Terry McLaurin. So that's part of it. Last year, and I know people hate to constantly bring this up, but you know, Cliff Kingsbury just lining him up on one side of the field, it makes him a very easy player to take away. He did take a career low 62.9% snaps on the line of scrimmage, so he was off the line of scrimmage more. But he was the left outside receiver on 72.3% of his snaps in reception perception. I only have 4 seasons logged since 2014 where a guy has taken 70+% of his snaps as a outside one side of the field player. 3 of those are, 3 of them are with Cliff Kingsbury. It's 2 DeAndre Hopkins, 2024 Terry McLaurin, and then weirdly Nelson Aguilar's 2015 season. So I don't know. That's like just, and sometimes when you're queuing this stuff up, I'm like, oh right, I charted Nelson Aguilar's rookie year. Yeah, sure. I guess it was a first round pick. So, but yeah, no. So it's that, and just to put like a practical example on that, because I think this is important instead of just complaining about like one number. If you look at his game in week 11 against the Philadelphia Eagles, that was like a game that almost single-handedly, and this rarely happens. So I almost rarely note it, but I think this is noteworthy because of what we're talking about. If you look at that game, it almost single-handedly ruined his success rate versus zone coverage number. Like it's 75.9%, which is, you know, it's not great, but it's kind of within expectations for these pure perimeter players. But if you remove that week 11 game against the Eagles, it jumps to 80.2%. And I know they're a good defense, but because he was just in one spot, like Quinyon Mitchell and these guys could just like bracket and like just shade coverage to his side, the offense was terrible in that game. So still a very good press man beater. No real signs of decline necessarily for him, even though he is a sneaky older player. But that's kind of some of the reasons why, to me at least, he's never popped that highly in terms of targets per route run.
Yeah, and I will say I'm still drafting him. I've taken the discount of the uncertainty, and that's now gone with him signing the contract. Good for him. Somebody who should have been paid this entire time. But it is interesting how I think that you make a good point. This is kind of just like a macro football take of like, I think Vic Fangio just probably picked up on what you just said of like, you can just take him out of the game pretty easily. And it does make me think like, could Dan Quinn like tap him on the shoulder and be like, come on, Cliff, like, can we both sides of the field?
I mean, Terry at one point last year, that Bengals game in week 3 where he had that long touchdown, which was on the right side of the field, he apparently went up to Cliff and was like, hey man, Like, let me run on that right side. Like, I think him and Jaden had looked at something or whatever. And yeah, just again, it's it's a little frustrating. I think Cliff again got a little bit better about it as the season went along. So hopefully, hopefully we can actually get some more of that this year, because it was a little frustrating. Do you worry at all about the fact that he signed the contract on Monday, August 25th? It's so soon to the start of the season. He hasn't practiced with the team after we just saw this with Ayuk and a little bit with CeeDee Lamb too. Like they admitted CeeDee Lamb admitted it took him a little bit to get in the swing of things. Ayuk was like a disaster to start. Do you worry about that at all? Because that has me. I don't know. I don't want to overreact too much to that, but it's certainly something that bothers me a little bit, especially a position like wide receiver where there's so much like timing and rhythm, as we talked about earlier.
I think it kind of cancels out for me, because you were getting the discount, but now you're going to have to pay up a little bit for it. But I also think to look, and it's tough because he's not this talent, but like Jamar Chase did the same thing last year, and then he got a triple crown where, he was holding out the entire time. And I do think when you talk about like between the years with Terry McLaurin, like he is somebody that's like locker room oriented. Like I assume that he's been doing everything he possibly could. He's like 30 at this point, so there's nothing else going on for Terry McLaurin. Like he seems like a guy who's all ball, you know what I mean? Like Indiana kid, Ohio State, whatever. So I guess, that's when you kind of get into the ins and outs of it. But yeah, I still like him. Like once you start to get to like that Mike Evans range of like mid to late fourth, and you just need a wide receiver too, I think he feels good. And like, why can't he just score 12 plus touchdowns again? It's going to be a good offense. He has the connection. I will say, where are you at on Debo right now? Are we believing the fat Debo? Is it slim Debo? Is it going to be, because I'm kind of excited for some of the rushing production. I've been taking him a little bit here and there. He was in the same draft class as McLaurin and Metcalf and these guys who are still like the primes of their careers. So I don't know. I know that he is famously like never, he has charted well against zone, but he's of course been his like own brand of receiver. You know what I mean? Where he's never been, he's not McLaurin in the way of like, when you picture a wide receiver in the NFL, Debo is like this own mold of a player.
Yeah, by the way, I just looked this up, and it was like 24.4% targets per route run on plays that were actually a pass last year for Terry McLaurin. So it was a little bit of the scrambles do kind of
that's great.
Bring it down a little bit. Probably scramble sacks, and Jaden Daniels is a guy that he will take some sacks for sure. Yeah. He's like small. People overreacted to it with him as a prospect, but he does have a small pressure to sack problem. But anyways, on Debo, I mean, geez, God almighty. Like he was terrible last year against man coverage, like fourth worst success rate versus man coverage that I've ever charted, which I know that like that's never been the strength of his game, but it really was a problem last year, even before he had pneumonia. Now I think he's going to, I don't think he's fat. I think he's going to like be in shape and he'll be fine. He's still like functional as a zone beater, but that number also declined last year as well. He fits this offense well, and I think he will have a nice role for them. He'll be useful in screens. He'll be useful on those like quick in breaking routes, digs where, Terry McLaurin takes coverage down the field, opens things up. Like I think Debo just goes in a fine range. I'm not like trying to avoid him, but I'm also not like actively drafting into him. I just worry that the rest of the offense is, I like borders on a little bit of arrogance, like what they've done this offseason. Like I think arrogance is harsh. They clearly are one of these teams that believes like, we've got a quarterback, that's all that matters, which is like what the Chiefs believe. That's how they approach Patrick Mahomes from a receiver perspective. That's like what the Bills believe. And like those teams have been rewarded for it. And I think Jaden Daniels can be one of those guys, but like they're writing it in pen year 2. That's what's happening here. Like they've got a backfield with Austin Eckler, who's still a good role player, but he's an older running back. I know everybody loves Bill, but like it's a 7th round rookie, Chris Rodriguez, the wide receiver core after Debo Samuel and Terry McLaurin. People talk about like, oh yeah, well, Noah Brown's your other starting wide receiver, but he's been injured. It's like, oh, geez, what's about Noah Brown? Like he should be your team's like 4th receiver at best. Like what the hell are we talking about? Zach Ertz is like super old at this point. Like a lot of these older guys had nice seasons for them last year, and they're just like banking on it not falling. It's the oldest team in the NFL. It's the oldest team in the NFL, despite having Jaden Daniels, like a second-year quarterback. So I don't know. I am just a little worried that the Commanders are, as a whole, could be like a very regression-based team, which does, again, Terry McLaurin and some of the touchdown stuff that we talked about. If they regress, that's going to hurt McLaurin. If they don't regress, it's like, who else is scoring touchdowns on this team? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. And I will say I've been sneaking in some 18th round Jalen Lane out there on underdog, just as like a maybe,
Yeah, maybe, but he definitely fits the Cliff Kingsbury, stuff as well. But like You tell me that like that guy and Debo are gonna exist on the same team? That's like Rondale Moore, Greg Dortch, which by the way, the Cardinals did that for years. So I don't know. Maybe I guess they'll do it again.
Now I want to pick your brain on just a couple of quick hitters here. I will say the first one, and this one I'm very curious about because I've been conflicted. This is honestly kind of nerds versus film guys of Jameson Williams. The Jameson Williams hype is really high right now. He's like a 4th round pick on a lot of places. Are we in? Are we out? How do we kind of see? How do we even view Jameson Williams at this point in his career? You know what I mean? Like where people seem to be penciling in this huge jump, but he's kind of not similar to Debo in terms of play style, but similar in terms of like he isn't DeAndre Hopkins, Des Bryant. You know, he's not the X. He is a different style of receiver at this point. What are you doing with Jameson Williams? Are we out? Are we in? Are we lukewarm?
I think I'm lukewarm. Like, it's funny you mentioned this is like a film versus nerds divide. I'm guessing the film guys are pro Jameson and the nerds are out. I don't really, I mean, I probably fall like in the center of this anyways.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to have the centrist take on this one. I'm like lukewarm. I think we're double counting some of like the way they're talking about Jameson Williams. And what I mean by that is like, they did this last year. Like where was, they're gearing him up for a big breakout. Dude, he broke out last year. Like he already had this breakthrough season. And I kind of feel like he's one of these guys that both needs the carrot like constantly out in front of him. I think he's one of those guys that they need to just like keep pumping it up and keeping him engaged. But I also think that he is a player who is very suited to obliterating practice. And I don't mean that like necessarily as a negative, but like George Pickens is this way. A.D. Mitchell is definitely this way, 100%. Like, he's going to win training camp every year, and then he gets into games and he can't beat zone coverage, like, and he's never where he's supposed to be. So that's like kind of more of a stupid anecdotal take. I think as a player, Jameson Williams is fine, but he's not a consistent separator against man press coverage, and he's turned into a solid zone beater that when he gets the ball, he couldn't just take it the distance, you know, and they schemed him really well. I don't mean that like as a negative thing, like, oh, they schemed him, but like they got him in these good positions where he would beat zone coverage on dig routes and crossing routes. He'd get the ball and he'd just run with it. So they maximized his speed that way rather than just being a vertical threat. And I just don't know what this offense is going to look like this year. Like, I think John Morton is one of the most important figures in the NFL this year because it's such a big burden to replace Ben Johnson. I think Dan Campbell is a smart offensive guy and gets underrated there, but he's still not going to be on the headset. He's still not going to be the one like dialing up these plays and putting the players in positions to win, which Ben Johnson was very good at doing. And we just don't know who John Morton is going to be there.
Yeah, I agree. It's certainly a gamble. Like the downside is pretty rough where there is no target floor. Now, I did want to ask the other,
and I would say one more thing on this too.
Yeah.
Isaac Tesla is real. Like he's a
that's
real
what I was
player.
going to ask. I was going to say my other most rostered player in Dynasty is Isaac Tesla because we talked about him. And that he's,
that's right. Yeah, that's right.
He's a fine 3rd round pick in the NFL.
Totally. And he went, by the way, he went earlier than I thought he was going to go.
Yeah.
I had him more like an early 4th, like late 3rd, early 4th rankings and reception perception. But like, so I mean, I guess kind of in the same-ish range, but still, I didn't expect him to go that high because he had like no college production, as you know. But he has a lot of tools, and I think the conversion from like big slot receiver to perimeter X receiver is kind of inspired. Like you could look at his RP profile and think like, well, he's got like downfield success rates that are akin to like a vertical X receiver, and obviously the size and athleticism, but the way that he was used was kind of slot-ish. So I don't know. I love what they've done with him. I think I want him to be good just so that the people who have no open mind about like the college production. Yeah, Ron, you're a little more open-minded than some of the other people out there. So I'm not talking about you here, but if people have like no open mind to this, I want them to be good just so that it breaks their brains a little. Would love that. But also, yeah, I really do think he has great hands. Didn't drop a pass at all, not just in his RP sample, but at all at Arkansas. And you've seen the hands of the preseason so far, like whether he, you know, the route running and separation and stuff, but he definitely has hands that he can block. So he's going to be on the field. I don't know if he's going to be fantasy relevant, but he's going to be on the field. He's going to take some opportunities. He's going to need some opportunities. The other thing, though, just with all of these Detroit guys, the one thing that I feel like people will be saying that Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to lose targets until he like retires, like, oh, what if Jameson Williams eats into St. Brown's I will believe that when I see it, baby, because I just think, number one, St. Brown is awesome. I don't care if he was a 4th round pick. That was like 1,000 years ago at this point. Awesome NFL player, gets better every single year, gets better against press man coverage every single year. And he's just such a Jared Goff type of wide receiver. And if this offense is going to regress a little bit, that's only going to push more volume to the guy that we know and Jared Goff knows he can rely on. So, but yeah, Isaac Tesla, definitely. I love that you got him in some dynasty drafts because he definitely is going to be an interesting player.
Free. And it's like, that's the thing about me. You say open-minded. I'm open-minded and I'm also a draft capital snob. So if you're going to go 3rd round in the NFL draft, like, and you're going to let me get him in my last pick in a rookie draft, and we're debating between Alec Manor and Mitchell Evans, like day 3 tight ends, like just give me Isaac Tesla. Now I will say he's somebody, don't go with your hopefully you draft Isaac Tesla, but no. I've been taking him like 18th round. You can take him 18th round, but he gets a spike week down the stretch. Somebody gets banged up. You bring up a good point with Amon-Ra St. Brown too, where he's like my 110, but sometimes you can get him in like the 201, 202 if he falls. Yeah. And he's somebody that, yes, like the 4th round stigma, but people forget like he's 4th round in the same way that like Puka Nacua and like Stephon Diggs were, where he was real ball knowers out there. No Amon-Ra St. Brown matter day highlights. He was a monster in high school and just kind of I got lost in the shuffle and what ended up being a monster receiving room, right? It was like him, London, Amon-Ra, Pittman, like they had everybody. And even, Tyler Vaughn back in the day was nice too. But the other question I had was Miami. What are we doing in Miami? The vibes are always brutal. Like they're all turning on Tyreek. Every time I'm like, yo, draft Waddle, my whole chat is he's made of glass, he can't do anything. Devon Achan's got a calf, the offensive line is awful. What are we doing? Are we taking any stabs on the passing game? I know Malik Washington's been like decent in preseason here. What do you got? Because I think Tyreek, when we talk about because you talked about this Detroit John Morton, I truly do think that Tyreek Hill is kind of like the skeleton key of this season, because if he is just Tyreek Hill and he goes back to 2023 and you get 22 points per game in the early to mid third, that's how you're going to make a lot of money this year. But he could also be stone dead. So I'm curious how he charted.
Tyreek, big step back last year as an individual player, which is why I've just been unwilling to take that stab in the 3rd round, because I think there's a chance that, in the 3rd round, it's like, whatever. Honestly, the 3rd round stinks this year.
Yeah, the 3rd round is bad.
3rd round stinks. The reason I actually like getting one of the early picks, like in the 1st round, is because you come back around in the 3rd and you're just like, oh God, I'll just take Jaden Daniels and keep it moving. Like, or one of the elite quarterbacks, like that's been kind of the best way to do it there. But anyways, with Tyreek Hill, like I said, the 3rd round stinks. It's not a great round this year. But he fits somewhere in there, just because the only thing I think that I will bet against is that he returns to 2023 form, because I say this a lot. I think the thing that is hardest to talk about with wide receivers is like player decline with reception perception, because sometimes we see it go like this and it's like a steady decline. Sometimes we see it go like right off the cliff, and it can go, and like there's no way to predict what's going to happen next. But once you see the decline has begun. When they're in their 30s, or there's like a bunch of injuries and stuff, with like Allen Robinson, right, was a guy he wasn't in his 30s, he was like late 20s, and he had a bunch of lower body injuries. And I was like willing to say, there was a dip last year, but like it's probably fine. It was not fine, and then again, Keenan Allen's another guy who was like declined, but still been very productive through his decline. Des Bryant's another one that once it was over, it was so over. So with Tyreek Hill last year, 2021 to 2023, averaged 75.7% success rate versus man, dipped down to 67.3% in 2024. So that's still like a usable number for a starting outside receiver, but it's not what Tyreek Hill was. So what I will bet against is that he goes again, like back up on the U there. So I think with that, I've just not been taken been taking Tyreek. And to your point about the floor is like 0, like he goes Antonio Brown, that is, I wouldn't normally say that, but with this guy in particular, that is true. So just to me, hands off on Tyreek. So I have drafted a lot of Jalen Waddle. Sorry to your chat, but I do think Waddle's a guy.
I like Waddle too.
Yeah, he's a great pick this year, man. Like, because everybody views it like that, where he's stuck, he's made of glass or whatever. But he was really banged. I don't want to get too deep into this because it's very in the weeds stuff, but like his efficiency stats obviously declined last year because he is the guy that I think people don't realize this. He runs the vast majority of his routes outside and on the line of scrimmage. Like he doesn't get any layups in this offense. So, or very, very few layups relative to the other players. And then last year there was 3 dudes in his way from that like layup, fake BS, Mickey Mouse target perspective. Not only is it Tyreek, but it was Devon Achane with the screens, and it was Jonnu Smith, who actually averaged the most EPA per target last year. I'm not even saying that was bad. Like those plays were good. The plays to Jonnu were good, but it's just when your quarterback's getting rid of the ball in 2.5 seconds, you're never making it to those boundary reads. So he just was kind of banged last year. To me, I think if I'm Mike McDaniel, which I'm not, and I'm glad I'm not, because like he said, it's a great day to be alive.
Yeah, he's waiting for a sweet relief.
He's waiting for sweet relief. So I'm glad I'm not Mike McDaniel. But if I was, I'd be trying to maximize the younger dude who we gave a big contract to, not the 31-year-old who's trying to talk his way off the team. So we'll see what happens there with that one. But I will say the Malik Washington thing is, one, I love it because I loved Malik Washington as a prospect. Like he was there under no circumstances was he a 6th round talent. Like that was a day 2 guy who fits this offense really well. So I'm very excited. And he's somebody that like, I do want to keep my eye on because he fits really well in some of those manufactured touches but also can beat man coverage. At the same time though, makes me squint at the Jalen Waddle stuff just because I was kind of hoping that like Nick Westbrook-Akine would be a sacrificial X receiver so they would move Waddle around. But right now that's probably not going to happen because Nick Westbrook-Akine is not good and Malik Washington probably is good.
Yeah. And even like I like Waddle, like his per route stuff is good too, where even with the stuff you mentioned where he's like banged up over his entire career, he has a better first down per out run, targets per out run, and yards per out run than Devontae Smith, who that's not even taking something away from Devontae Smith. It's just like 2 guys in the same class, similar amount of routes over their entire careers. Waddle has been right there with efficiency. Now, my last question to get you out of here is, who is your favorite late round sleeper? We talked about some here, Malik Washington, Isaac Tesla. If you are, in your home league draft, so we're talking, round 16, you're a little lighter at receiver than you would have hoped, and you just want an upside stash on the bench. Who's your go-to?
I'm going to give you one boring name because he goes higher, but I'm going to give you a fun name too. The boring name, I think actually is Josh Palmer. Okay. I know, dude, it's so gross, so boring. But Palmer is somebody that I thought his rookie year was terrible. Pretty much just like crossed him off my list. But because he signed with the Bills, I went back and charted him last year. I think I see other like separation numbers, which I don't want to criticize anybody else's work, but like, because the processes are just different and, and I don't understand like what everybody's process is, but I see other separation stats, like love Josh Palmer. I think he's like an average, maybe probably below average separator, but the particular ways where he wins, like dig routes, post routes, kind of these deeper crossers where he can build up speed and momentum, I think fit Joe Brady's offense well, number one. I also think he's going to be on the field a ton because he could play all 3 positions, and I'm kind of hoping he takes some X receiver stuff just to make Keon Coleman more viable. So I actually have those guys ranked in the same tier, and I think both are draftable. So that's my boring, like late round sleeper name that I think he's just, again, very similar to Rashad Bateman, but not the same level of talent and intrigue on my end, but he's going to be on the field every single snap for one of the best offenses in the league. So I just think that's like worth mentioning from a fantasy football perspective, because I think that the role is going to be there. He's going to be
week 3 waiver wire is going to be like, go get Josh Palmer because he scored a touchdown and had like 80 yards this week,
Yeah, I mean, he might be the week 2 waiver wire column because like I don't remember off the top of my head who they debut against, but like, yeah, again, he's just going to be on the field a ton. So he's definitely somebody. The other one though is Torrey Horton, who was like one of my favorite wide receiver prospects. Oh my God, I saw Torrey Horton, and again, similar to Malik Washington, had an injury, fell to the 5th round. Washington fell to the 6th. In no way, shape, or form was that guy a 5th round pick. Great player, separated at all 3 levels. So he can win in the vertical game. He can play outside. That's what this team needs, man. I think Torrey Horton is going to open the season. Maybe he'll be behind MVS, although he's pushed MVS for snaps in the offseason in training camp preseason. I just think he's a baller, dude. And again, this is a guy that for a team that needs to get some perimeter wide receiver help. Like Jackson Smith-Njigba, Cooper Kupp is what he is at this point. They need kind of a 3rd guy there. So I like Torrey Horton as like a deeper name.
Yeah, I love that call. And the numbers honestly matched up with him too. I know Josh Norris, he's deep in the weeds on anything that comes out of any player's mouth at any point in time. Josh Norris is keyed in on. And JSN, I think on the pivot, they were like mentioning, he like said, I think Kenneth Walker's their bread and butter.
Yep.
And then he ran through the receivers, and right after Cup, he mentions Torrey Horton. So
that right after it. Yep. 94th percentile success rate versus press. Obviously lower level Colorado State. But you know, man, if you're going to play at the lower level, you want to smoke that competition, which is what he did.
Yep.
And they need a guy to win outside and threaten vertically, posts, digs, outbreakers. That's what Torrey Horton does, man. Yeah, I also saw that clip. Yeah, Josh conveniently left off that he like followed up with Zach Charbonnet right after Kenneth Walker. But I did see Josh tweet that, and to me, I watched that. I was like, I don't care what he said, but running backs mentioned Torrey Horton's name right away. Let's go. I love to see that.
Exactly. So this was fun. This is a show I love doing. We just talk wide receivers. I get to pick your brain on all the above here, but let people know. I'll make sure to get all your links in the description, in the comments down below. But what can people look forward to? Where can they find you? What do you got going on?
Yeah, appreciate it, man. I host the Yahoo Fantasy Forecast for Yahoo. We're live 5 days a week at 5 p.m. Eastern, Sunday to Thursday. So if you can't possibly get enough of me there, also Reception Perception, the show. And yeah, if you love this conversation, you will love receptionperception.com. Got 3 tiers of subscription, something for everybody. In addition to my wide receiver charting, James Coe has also been charting running backs now. So we've got a lot of different stuff for people to check out there.
Yep. The duo from, I believe, you guys have been together since NFL Network back in the day?
Yeah, it took me all these years to convince him to actually put, the hard hat on and start grinding the film. So, no, I'm just kidding about that. But yeah, James and I have been together forever. So, he's great, and definitely we would not be a functioning business if it was not for James Coe, which, I mean, I know he would say about me too, because that's quite literally the whole thing. So yeah, no, I love James and happy to be working with him.
But yeah, everyone that watched, make sure you check him out. Thank you for coming on, Matt. As always, everyone out there, subscribe, leave a like, and I will see you guys in the next one.
Stones, like this froze, ice cold.